Hi there. My name is Scott Gerard, and I am a project manager with School Perceptions. I had the pleasure of working on the Meridian CUSD number 223 community survey, and I'm happy to share the survey results with you here. This is a little preview of the types of information you're going to see throughout the presentation. We've got background information, which will mostly look familiar. It's what you saw in your survey. We've got survey and respondent information about who took your survey. We've got the results and analysis, and at the end, wrap up and questions. Little background on who we are at School Perceptions. Our mission is to help educational leaders gather, organize, and use data to make strategic decisions. We've been doing this work since 2002, and in that time, we've helped more than 1,300 school districts navigate the strategic planning and referendum planning process. On to the Meridian survey. Your survey had an August 29th deadline. With 822 respondents, we had a 21.4% response rate. This is very strong. Our average is in the mid to upper teens, maybe the 15 to 18% range. So anytime we see a 2 starting that response rate number, we're really happy to surpass 20%. Given the number of respondents, we have a plus or minus 3.49% margin of error. That's just a function of the number of people who took the survey, but it's a good number to keep in mind as we go through the results here. Among survey respondents, your largest group was 65 plus. That's pretty typical for our surveys, and it's also good because folks in that age demographic are often reliable voters. And so if you're surveying related to a potential ballot measure, it's important you're hearing from them. We also had good representation from our other age groups here, including 24% from 35 to 44-year-olds and 20% of survey respondents who fell in the 45 to 54-year-old range. 92% of your survey respondents have a primary residence in the district. This is important because those are the folks who would be able to vote on a ballot measure. 7% of your respondents have a primary residence outside of the district. Those could be staff who live outside the district. We still want to hear from them. Their voice is important throughout this survey, but when we're looking to predict a potential outcome of a ballot measure, we need to focus on those 92% that do have a primary residence within your district. 58% of your respondents live in or nearest to Stillman Valley. 25% live in or nearest to Davis Junction. And finally, 17% live in or nearest to Monroe Center. 18% of your respondents are staff in the district. 41% of your respondents are parents in the district. That leaves the rest of the group being your non-parents, non-staff, and they're the largest group of community members in any district. So we have good representation from all three of those subgroups on this survey. We asked how folks would like to receive information from the district, and here we broke it down into two of those groups that I just mentioned. So in purple, we have the non-parents, non-staff, and in blue, we have the parents. Both groups really like your newsletters. So 75% of your non-parents, non-staff would like to receive information via a newsletter, and 61% of parents. The only other option here that surpassed 50% is emails for your parents. 77% of parents would like to receive information from the district via email. Here's a reminder of some of the background information that was presented in the survey. So first we explained the health, life, safety inspection process and how much Meridian would be able to spend on HLS projects over the next 5 years without asking for voter approval, but that additional projects, local voters would need to approve a bond referendum. We outlined some of those HLS projects, including HVAC, roofing, interior renovations, and site work. And then we outlined some of the additional elementary school challenges, specifically around space and capacity. We explained that these challenges are too costly to be paid for from the annual budget. Instead, the district would need to explore a bond referendum, which requires voter approval. We asked the question, what advice would you give the school board? And here we're looking at just your resident respondents. 44% of your resident respondents would give the advice to only address the required health, life, safety issues. 34% would give the advice to explore a bond referendum to complete more projects. 22% were not sure or need more information. So you had a plurality there of your residents who would advise you to only address the required HLS issues. We broke this down a little further into those subgroups. So again, what we have here is staff, parents, and non-parents, non-staff. The dark blue is staff. As you can see, 20% of staff say only address the HLS issues, 55% say explore a bond referendum, and 25% are not sure. Among your parents, the lighter blue group there, 31% would like you to only address the required HLS issues, 51% would have you explore a bond referendum, and 18% are not sure. Finally, we get to the non-parents, non-staff. Again, the largest group of your community. And importantly, because they're that largest group, you really need to look at where they're falling. 59% of that group would have you only address the required health, life, safety issues, compared to 17% that would have you explore a bond referendum. The other 24% there are unsure. We do some weighting because what we found is based on census data, about 70% of your voting population, your potential voters, are going to be that non-parent, non-staff group. About 30% of your voting population are going to be parents. So we want to weight their support. So what we do is that 0.30 is representative of the 30% of your voting population, that is parents. We multiply that 0.30 times the percentage support that parents had for the idea of exploring a bond, 51%. We then do the same for non-parents, non-staff with the 0.70 multiplied by the 17% support non-parents, non-staff had for exploring a bond. And when we add those two numbers together, we get a 27.2% weighted support for exploring a bond. We then got a bit more specific on the survey, so we explained what a new elementary school plan would look like, how the school configuration would look, and how it would save money in HLS updates. We then outlined more details about the new elementary school, where it would be built, some of the features, the cost, and the tax increase associated with a potential bond referendum. We asked, would you support building a pre-K through 5 elementary school through a bond referendum at this time? These are your resident respondents, again, broken down by staff, parents, and non-parents, non-staff. As you can see, you're right around 50% support from your staff and parents to build a pre-K through 5 elementary school through a bond referendum. However, you only have 16% support from that non-parent, non-staff group, compared to 72% of that group that said no, they would not support building that school through a bond referendum at this time. We did the same weighting exercise for this support that we did for the general idea of exploring a bond. And as you can see, what it comes out to is 25.6%. That is, if the election were held today on a bond referendum at this number, this is the percentage support we would predict you would receive on the ballot. We also outlined some potential future projects. So after the HLS updates, some other renovations and things that could be done. We tested these on a high, medium, and low scale. We asked folks to mark it a high priority if they want it to be addressed immediately, a medium priority if it's important, but they want it addressed in the future, and a low priority if it's not a priority for them. The projects we tested were a performing arts center, football field turf, baseball, softball, and soccer fields, and a field house. What you're seeing on this slide is that darkest green on the left is the percentage that responded that that project was a high priority. The lighter green in the middle is the percentage that responded medium priority, and the yellow is low priority. On the right-hand column, you see a priority score. That's calculated by assigning every high priority score gets a 3, every medium priority response gets a 2, and every low priority response gets a 1. So it's on a scale of 1 to 3, and we look at where that score falls. For all four of these additional projects, the score fell between low and medium, leaning toward low, which means none of these is a major priority for your community at this time. We also tested how much of a tax increase folks would support through a referendum. So, how we read this slide is to start on the left with that dark green. That is the percentage of people within that respondent group that would support a bond referendum at the given level. So, dark green is 40 million. So, for example, 7% of your non-parents, non-staff respondents would support a $40 million bond referendum. As we move to the right, the colors change. Another 4% said they would support a $30 million bond referendum. We then add those numbers together because as the cost decreases, support increases. And if you would support a larger bond referendum, you would typically support it as it gets smaller as well. So therefore, what we have overall is 11% support for $30 million bond referendum among non-parents, non-staff. As we continue to move to the right and add support, we look for where those numbers cross 50%, the support required for a bond referendum to pass. For your non-parents, non-staff, it does not cross 50% until we're in the no bond referendum group. Among your parents and your staff, we surpass that 50% threshold in the $10 million bond referendum. So we once again weighted it and we looked at both a $10 million bond and a smaller bond. And as you can see, the predicted weighted outcomes for those, given the support seen on the previous slide, is for a $10 million bond, you'd have 31% support. And for a smaller bond, you'd have 37.3% support. We also ask some overall satisfaction questions on these surveys. So in 4 areas, delivering a high quality education, keeping the public informed, managing funds appropriately, and building pride in the community, we ask how the district is doing. On this slide, we've broken it down into those same subgroups, staff, parents, and non-parents, non-staff. Each of these items is scored on a 1 to 4 scale. So if someone said the district is doing great, that receives a score of 4. If they said good, it receives a score of 3. Fair is a score of 2, and poor is a score of 1. That means the median is a 2.5. So anything above a 2.5 means you're closer to good and great than you are to fair and poor. We also look here at the same areas and on the same scale, but now this is for all respondents to the survey. So 84% of your respondents said you were doing great or good at delivering a high quality education. In the middle column, you see an average. That's the overall score. Again, this is on a 1 to 4 scale, so a 2.5 is the median. That means you're above the median on 3 of the 4 areas tested here. That final column, the comparison percentile, shows what percentage of districts that have taken these surveys and measured these items you are doing better than. So on delivering a high quality education, you're doing better than 70% of districts that have taken this survey and used these measures. We also ask an overall satisfaction question. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend the district to a friend or family member? The district's score on this measure overall is a 7.10 compared to the comparison score of 6.82, putting you in the 60th percentile. So you are better than 60% of districts that use this question on their surveys. Our eyes, whenever we're looking through results, always go first to the top 3. Those tend to be really good measures of how many folks are really enthusiastic about your district. So between 8 and 10, you have more than 50% of your survey respondents really excited about your district and who really love talking and sharing good things about your district. So it's really nice to see whenever that group of top 3 can surpass 50%. So, in summary, respondents do not support the district exploring a bond referendum at this time. If the district did pursue a bond for a new elementary school, the bond would be unlikely to pass. Voters are also unlikely to approve less expensive bond proposals at this time. Meridian is outperforming a majority of its peers in terms of delivering a high quality education and the overall satisfaction and respondents' willingness to recommend Meridian schools. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation. I hope the information was helpful for Meridian, and best of luck.